Now let's turn our attention to Stamford Bridge. Despite a mixed start to the season on the pitch, the chaos off the field seems to be going on at Chelsea, with reports of a rift between the ownership. Todd Boehly has reportedly fallen out with Clearlake Capital, who he co-owns the club with, and is said to have lost faith in their working relationship. Stefan, there's a report in the Times today from Matt Lawton saying the exit of Mauricio Pochettino sparked this rift. Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart apparently produced an 18-page report explaining why Pochettino needed to be replaced. Does it seem to you now that both sides are trying to push each other out in this scenario?
Well, I think realistically, given the way the shareholding works and the scale of the investment that's been made, it's not going to be an easy thing for one party to push the other one out. I think what we're probably seeing now is it becoming public that clearly behind the scenes, the shareholders have not been completely aligned on strategic decisions or day-to-day matters. And I suspect that the Pochettino thing is only the final straw that's triggered us into this next phase, really, and that things have been brewing for quite some time. We've known from the outside that the sort of perception that Boehly was in control has not been correct, and that Clearlake have been much more hands-on over the last 6 to 12 months after a period where Boehly was the key decision maker. So we know that there have been changes. And of course, most of the rest of the game is looking at the Chelsea situation and slightly perplexed by some of the strategic decisions taken in respect from a footballing perspective. And so it's no great surprise that from the inside as well, some of the shareholders are thinking, I don't agree with X or Y. And I think that's what we're starting to see. And so really what we're going to see now is actually how do they unwind their ownership and their investments. And that's not going to be straightforward because the sums involved are very, very substantial.
How could this all play out then, do you think? Does it become a bit of a battle between these two sides? And if it is, who for you is more likely to come out on top?
Well, Clearlake hold most of the cards. I mean, they are the 61% shareholder, first of all. They also have certain additional rights within their shares. And then on top of that, you've got a situation where Boehly, Weiss and Walter have got 13% each. So in essence, unless they act as a block, they are a relatively small minority. So really it's a question of whether one of the sides can find enough money to buy the other one out. And it's not an insignificant amount of money when the valuation may be, $3 billion plus. I think it's impossible at this stage to say how it's going to plan out. But in terms of Clearlake, if Clearlake don't want to sell, I think it's going to be very hard for Boehly and the rest of his consortium to remove them. They will have rights to effectively block certain things happening, and they are in the driving seat right now.
Steve, hearing all those details there from Stefan, and also he's picked out the fact that people have been a bit perplexed by the way that Chelsea have done their business since that takeover as well. But in terms of this rift, how much do you think that as this plays out, it could harm Chelsea's development?
Yeah, I think within a football club, you have to be aligned and together, from the manager and the team, from the right back to the centre back, right the way through to the chairman and the board. If you don't have that alignment and that togetherness, then you are going to struggle to deliver ultimately what you want, which is success on the pitch. There has to be a togetherness. There has to be that mentality. And clubs, I was at Millwall for 8 years, we thrived on having that togetherness throughout the club under John Berylson and having that siege mentality that allows you to deliver. And when that breaks, and I saw it at Southend when I was there for a period of time, when that breaks, it becomes extremely difficult. And what goes on in the boardroom shouldn't affect what happens on the pitch, but it's inevitable that actually that is going to cause problems.
On the last episode of How Football Works, which you can watch on the talkSPORT YouTube channel, we had Jim Rodwell on, the CEO of Charlton, and he said that actually he didn't mind what Chelsea were doing off the pitch. He said, yes, it's unorthodox, but actually, you know, in the long run, this could work for them. Is that how you see it?
Well, it's entertaining, right? Let's put it up. Look, of course, there isn't a rule book that says you have to run a club in a certain way, and people operating in different ways and trying to do things differently and to break the market and be different. It is sometimes good, and sometimes that can work. But there's a reason why clubs have been running away for a long time. So I get what Jim Rodwell's saying. I know Jim well. And yes, maybe it works, but only time will tell, right?
Indeed. Stefan, the Chelsea CEO, Chris Jurasek, has left the club after 15 months. And I can see your wry smile because on your Twitter, you threw your hat in the ring to be the next CEO of Chelsea. I mean, how serious were you?
Not serious at all. I think, given my views on how Chelsea have emerged over time, I think it's extremely unlikely that they'll pick up the phone. But look, Chelsea is a great club, right? I mean, the opportunities there are obvious, and it's going to be a job that anybody is going to want in the game, whether it's worked or not right now for Jurasek. You know, it is kind of irrelevant. That there's a massive opportunity for them, but it's an incredibly challenging situation. We know that without the £100 million a year plus from the Champions League, it's a challenge on their current cost base. And unless they can find a way to address that, they are going to have a challenge going forward in respect of PSR, squad cost control, whatever the regime is in place. Unless Chelsea can get their revenues back up to the £500 million level and beyond, then they are going to have some challenges. And that's really got to be the key priority for them, getting back in the Champions League. And they may well have the quality on the pitch to do that this season. We'll see. But you know, I think as Steve says, everybody pulling in different directions off the pitch is not going to help with that stability. But there's clearly an amazing opportunity there. I think everything that Todd Boehly says about why he invested in the first place, the best sport in the best city and the best location within that city, it puts Chelsea in a very favourable position. But they have to deliver and they have to execute. And that's going to be a big challenge for them.
Does it feel at the moment as if Todd Boehly is being squeezed out of Chelsea?
Well, it does. It does look like that from the outside. I mean, you know, if you were to look at the briefing, I mean, that is, I think, what they're indicating in the briefings. But it's not that easy to squeeze somebody out if he carries the support of 38% of the shareholder base, which I think it looks like Todd Boehly does. It looks like Todd Boehly speaks for not just himself, but also for the other two main investors. But unfortunately, that probably means that it's going to be more of a battle than Chelsea would hope. It won't be something where, and also the value of the club, but it won't be something that can be fixed in a very simple way. If that relationship really is broken, the cash required to fix the problem is very, very big. And that's what would concern me. But, you know, these people are all very sophisticated, very successful business people. I'm sure that they can find a way. It's just a case of exactly what that looks like.
Steve, I'm not sure if you've been involved in clubs where this has been a similar kind of situation, and how has it played out sometimes if that has been the case?
Probably need to be slightly careful what I say now. Look, I was at Southend, and Ron Martin, who's left that club now, was a complex individual, ran the club from a high in an unusual way. When I first joined there, Paul Sturrock was the manager, and people weren't getting paid, players weren't getting paid, and we had to create a huge siege mentality amongst the squad. And that togetherness they managed to create, in spite of what happened above them, almost to prove that they were better, actually really worked. So it doesn't always follow that the instability or such challenges cause insurmountable problems. There are solutions, and footballers are very good at finding ways of dealing with complex issues on the field and off the field. So it's not straightforward. And if it was straightforward, football would be boring. So I've seen situations where boards aren't aligned and it becomes very, very challenging. I was at Charlton for a number of years, and as we went down the leagues, that became a difficult problem with the boards actually not aligned. And as a result, the club ended up in League One, having fallen out of the Premier League. So it can go both ways. It's unquestionable that togetherness running through a club from the top of the club down to the bottom is the best way forward. And I don't think anyone would ever dispute that is going to cause you a problem. That's not going to cause you a problem, but the other way is more likely to.
Stefan, I know you were joking about Chelsea, but on a serious note, if, I don't know, Brighton or Bournemouth or a club like that came in and said, Stefan, we want you to be our CEO, would you do it?
I'm available. I'm ready. Premier League, any Premier League opportunity. Yeah.
Fantastic.
You know where to find me. Yeah. No, Chelsea as well, but I suspect they don't want me.
And Steve, what about you?
Well, it seems that Stefan and I are only here because we're out of work. So, look, you're in. I've been in the game for 23 years as CEO, and at the beginning of that as a finance director. The game is unique. It's fantastic. It gives you a huge amount. It takes a huge amount. It can leave you with scars. But the overriding feeling is one of absolute joy to have done a job that most people would love to be able to have the privilege of doing. So the opportunity to get back in, you'd love to do it. And I think, clearly that long-term experience and that knowledge of the nuances of the game is really important. And the owners that come in now and they say, "Oh, we can do this ourselves. We know differently. We're gonna change this." Inevitably, they actually find out that it's a bit more complicated than that, and experience counts for a lot.